Josh Allen should have won the MVP over Lamar Jackson. Look, I get people are upset about the fact that Lamar Jackson did have better stats than Josh Allen, and he still lost the award. But that's part of what makes this award kind of interesting. This is an award that's called Most Valuable Player, not Best Player. And Lamar Jackson, just by default, could not really be the most valuable player. I've made the argument before, usually the rare cases where a player would win MVP, even if they weren't necessarily on a team where they were just carrying them, are teams who have players that significantly upgrade the team. So like Mahomes in 2018, when he took a Chiefs team that was on the fringe of winning that division every year, but did win, and made them a legit bona fide Super Bowl contender, while also putting up 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, a stat that only few other quarterbacks have ever done in the history of the NFL. In this case, I don't know how you can really call Lamar Jackson an MVP when the fact of the matter is there were games where the Ravens were having other teams game plan around Derrick Henry rather than Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson didn't have a good year. I'm not saying, I even think that he was the best quarterback. But this is not a statistical award. It's more of an impactful award. For me personally, I've always thought the MVP award to be based on performance in big games. I understand that quarterbacks aren't necessarily a winning stat, but there's a reason why Joe Burrow wasn't even close to this conversation. He had the best stats of any of those three quarterbacks. At the end of the day, Josh Allen performed better than any other quarterback in big games this year, 1 year. I know he lost to Lamar Jackson head to head early on in the year, but at the end of the day, let's just be realistic. The MVP usually is decided by some sort of recency bias. Do I agree with it? No, but then you also look at every other game that the Bills either won or lost. Like I mentioned, he was the only quarterback to have beaten Patrick Mahomes this year, but also against the Texans, even a bad game where he was 9 of 30 completion percentage, he had a 60% QBR and had them one play away from tying the game and potentially winning it in overtime. And then you look at the Rams game, he had one of the best games of his career and they still lost, right? Otherwise, they were 13-4 and was constantly putting them in positions to win. Meanwhile, you look at Lamar Jackson, there were a few games where he played where he was the reason why they lost. The Philadelphia Eagles game, he was the big reason why they lost. Against the Steelers, the first time when they lost, he was the big reason why they lost. And I just don't think you can make an argument for that being an MVP frontrunner. All in all, I think that if the NFL wants to clear up this criteria, they got to be more clear about the criteria, or they got to create another award. Make it like a Heisman versus Maxwell, best player versus MVP type thing.